All right.
Right there?
Eh?
I started the meeting now.
Yeah, man. I think so. You feel like you can come and eat and we can eat now. No fun. And I said, Mama, we tell the precious screen and pass this up to me.
No paano.
All right. Thanks for waiting, everyone. So this evening we're on Shemot chapter 12. And this is a very lengthy chapter, I must say. You know, it's yesterday we did just chapter 11, and it was a very short chapter. But now we have almost 60 verses. The good thing is that we'll go through it smoothly because we all would have read a little bit about it, so that would allow you to support me throughout this study. Support the study, that is. All right. In this chapter, what we'll realize is that the Creator gives a portion of Torah instructions in Mitzrayim. Aaron has already helped with the miracles, and now Moshe is going to do the main part regarding the teaching of what the Creator will give regarding the covenant, the calendar, which is so often discussed. And we'll look at the Passover instructions and how Israel prepares to leave by night. So I'm going to read verses 1 through to 6. Let me just check to see if Brother Petrus, okay, not yet joined, but in any case, we'll continue. And the Creator spoke to Moshe. Let me just get this on a bigger font. And the Creator spoke to Moshe and to Aaron in the land of Mitzrayim, saying, "This new moon is the beginning of new moons for you. It is the first new moon of the year for you. Speak to all the congregation of Israel, saying, on the 10th day of this new moon, each one of them is to take for himself a lamb according to the house of his father, a lamb for a household. And if the household is too small for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next to his house take it according to the number of the beings, according to each man's need. You make your count for the lamb." Verse 5 says, "Let the lamb be a perfect one, a year-old male. Take it from the sheep or from the goats, and you shall keep it until the 14th day of the same new moon. Then all the assembly of the congregation of Israel shall slay it between the evenings." All right, so there we have clear instructions about new month and the new lamb. It's affecting me. The sound coming from the other room. All right, so what we see here is that they're in the land of Mitzrayim, and this appears to be the first Torah instruction that's given while they're still in Mitzrayim, because we'd have seen the first instruction would have been in Bereshit 1 when Adam was told to be fruitful and multiply. But while they are in Mitzrayim, this is the first instruction that's given, and so we want to look at it keenly, not just gloss over it. Right? So this month is for you the first. Any other version that we're reading suggests something different? 12 verse 1. This month is the head of the counts for all months. Right? And from now on, this is your first month. It must be visibly identified. So already if we have three different ways of marking the new month, whether a sliver, a dark conjunction, or a full moon, then one is already eliminated. The one that the Ish people use is the one that you don't see a thing. That's where they start. So if it goes up from big down to small, and when they don't see anything, they see a little slight little thing, and then the following day that they don't see anything, that appears to be the conjunction phase of the moon. Conjunction is not mentioned anywhere in Torah. Neither we see the word slither in Torah in three negative contexts, but we don't, for time's sake, we would not go to those three references. We also don't see the word full moon in this text here. So let me ask questions rather than repeat what is mentioned in the text. Who, verse 3 says, speak to the entire congregation about it, right? And this is something for all to know. Why does the first commandment in Egypt reset the month or starts the month? Okay, any ideas yet? All right. It has to be, there must be a reason for it. It could be that redemption of the people starts with a new calendar. Time has been reset in terms of going through slavery and coming out of slavery. So a time of freedom should be a time that is marked, right? And it must not be marked by the system in Mitzrayim. If we know in Egypt and in the Islamic world today, they start their month by using a slither or a sliver. All of them start by that. And if that was a practice from the beginning, then that is the practice that the children of Israel would have been exposed to when they went down to Egypt. Right? Why would it be necessary for the Creator to tell them when the month starts if that is the current practice of starting a month in Egypt? I don't mind you being reserved in the comments, but this is something I'd really want to know. You know, why would he point out the start if it is the same start as what the Egyptians do to this day? Right? That's one question. Right? We also see in verse 3, moving on from verses 1 and 2, that the instruction was to talk to the entire congregation and tell them to take a lamb for themselves, lamb according to the size of the household. Right? Who was to speak in verse 3? Was it Moshe was to speak this time, or was it Aharon to speak at this time? Because it said that he spoke to Moshe and Aaron. So how do we know which of them is? I know they work together. But when he told them to speak to the congregation about Passover, who was the instruction given to? Should we assume it's the older one, or should we assume that it's Moshe? Should we assume that it's the spokesman? Because remember in chapter 7, verse 2, he said Aharon would speak for Moshe, right? But here, Moshe speaks to the elders and the people. So which one? We won't make a big deal out of it because the main thing is that the message is relayed. And when the speaking is to the congregation of Israel, does it include us, the future Israel, or it was just those people at that time? A lot of religious groups today say that these instructions only applied to Israel back in the day. And so if we were to identify Israel today, it does not apply to them. Right? It doesn't say that. But that's what persons do when they are grown up and taught particular doctrine and they are comfortable in it, they do not want to shift from what they're doing when they realize the authenticity of the Torah. So they find an excuse to say this is not for old Israel, it is only for future or current Israel. But that is easily demolished in verse 14, which we'll read later. As a matter of fact, I should just jump down there now. Verse 14 says, and this shall become to you a remembrance, and you shall celebrate it as a festival to the Creator throughout your generations, forever, all the time. Celebrate it as a festival, as an everlasting law. Right? So we rubbish that claim that it's only for the old time thing, and it's not applicable to us today. Verse 4 says that the household is small, let his neighbor take it according to each man's need. And it is to be shared. Right? 1 lamb per household. So if the family is big, that means everybody's going to get a little bit of meat. If the family is small, then everybody's going to get a lot of meat. Which household do you want to be in? Right? It depends on your appetite. But it must be for who can eat. Right? So the baby would not be in it because the baby would be on breast milk or something like that. It says according to the household, according to each man's need, you may make your count for the lamb. But one thing it sure teaches is that the lamb is to be shared, right? And sharing is a part of, there are so many important gems that Torah teaches, and one is sharing. So if we were just to see anything good in Torah, we can see that sharing is a very good thing. And we are to share our best. It must be a perfect lamb, a 1-year-old sheep or goat. I think yesterday my brother asked, which one should we choose and which one should we offer? It is either sheep or goat. I think if we were to go to Devarim chapter 14 and verse 4, it will tell you that these are the living creatures which you do eat: ox, sheep, and goat. So for those who love the meat, those are acceptable animals to consume: ox, sheep, and goat. And there are others, but we just get back to that. So to let you know that sheep and goat are in it. And they were to keep it until the 14th day, and the whole assembly kills it between the evenings. This is another widely discussed time frame, between the evenings. If it's between the evenings, it means it must be done before evening. That's one thing for sure. And I must relay my experience. Last year, I was part of the processing of a sheep. And I can tell you, that is not something you can do in 1, 2, or 3 hours. You need at least 6 hours in order for the blood to be drained out. There's no way you can do it just at sunset and you end up preparing that meal before night. And so I would have realized that I would have been doing it wrongly based on the groups that I was associated with. And I don't feel any way embarrassed or less of a learner to know that I was practicing something wrong. And that's a big thing today. Nobody wants to accept that their old practices, it is wrong. And they need to do the right thing once they see the right thing mentioned in Torah. So I'm past that, and I hope trust that when we see things, we adapt where necessary. Why did they need to hold it for 4 days? Well, I can tell you, holding something for 4 days shows that it's not a spur of the moment decision. It is something that is adequately considered. They are conscious of. The family lives with the animals. They inspect it, and it wasn't a rushed or repulsive action. right? And this was done by the community, right? The entire congregation and Israel. Well, it's kind of unique in verse 6 because we see then all the assembly of the congregation of Israel. So we see three nouns there. An assembly, we see a congregation, and we see Israel. And this shows everybody was involved. There was corporate unity. And of course, there was household responsibility. Right? We'll read verses 7 through to 14 as we have a lot to go through. Verses 7 to 14. And they shall take some of the blood and put it on the two doorposts and on the lintel of the houses where they eat it. And they shall eat the flesh on that night, roasted in fire, with unleavened bread and with bitter herbs they shall eat it. Do not eat it raw, nor boiled at all with water, but roasted in fire, its head with its legs and its inward parts. And do not leave of it until morning, and what remains of it until morning you are to burn with fire. And this is how you eat it: your loins girded, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and you shall eat it in haste. It is the Pesach of the Creator. And I shall pass through the land of Mitzrayim on that night, and shall strike all the firstborn in the land of Mitzrayim, both man and beast, and on all the mighty ones of Mitzrayim I shall execute judgment. I am the Creator. And the blood shall be a sign for you on the houses where you are. And when I see the blood, I shall pass over you when I strike the land of Israel, of the land of Mitzrayim. And this day shall become to you a remembrance, and you shall celebrate it as a festival to the Creator throughout your generations. Celebrate it as a festival, an everlasting law. So we see clear instructions to put the blood on the house and to eat the lamb. One of the questions that will come to mind is the blood mainly a sign for the Creator, or is a sign for Israel? You shall put the blood, shall be a sign for you on the houses where you are. That's what verse 13 says. And I shall pass over you, and let the plague not come unto you to destroy you. But how do we know who it is for? The blood is for. And there was actually a verse that actually hinted at what is that for. Right? We'll get it. We'll get it. But it was to put on the lintel and doorpost. And we know the lintel, the two part of the door that goes up and down, that's vertical. And then, that's the doorpost. And the lintel is the part that goes to the two vertical ones. So that's the horizontal one. It's like the upper beam. These are boundary markers and not tables, but it's put on the lintel. Is that inside the house or outside the house? Right? I know where it is, because it's the last part of verse 7 says, on the lintel of the house is where they eat it. But you cannot eat on a lintel, you cannot eat on a doorpost. So I believe that it was on the inside. And if it was on the inside, it was for something for the children of Israel to actually look at too, right? The Creator does not need to see it externally to see it. Even whether it's on the inside or on the outside, He would see it. And this food that was to be eaten must be eaten with bitter herbs, right? It must be eaten with bitter herb. And what I can think about is the bitter, miserable life that they had while they were in slavery. A question was asked yesterday: when it's roasted, do you eat everything that is inside it, or do you throw away some of the pertinence? Right? And I think that it is to be the inward parts should be washed, and the focus is really on the roasting, right? It's to be focused, not stew, not boil. The instruction is wash it. Well, no, the instruction is not wash it. The instruction is roast it with bitter herbs, and you shall eat it. So if you want to wash the inside, like the liver and the kidney and so on, you could maybe take those out, wash them, and put them back in, and you do the roasting. You still would have been honoring the command of following the creator's instructions. And of course, everything must be eaten, and what's left must be burned. And you can eat all night long. Eat as much as you want to your heart's delight. But when it comes to morning, I think it's in verse 10, you see the word morning mentioned twice. Not sure why. It says, do not leave off it until morning, and what remains of it until morning. So we see two until morning mentioned in verse 10. Right, so it shows that before, that would be the time of dawn. So it's not to be left over. But the morning language is kind of cloudy to me, because does it mean two parts of that the morning has two parts, a starting point and an ending point, or it mean that the second day, after the second day you should stop eating? For anybody who has a wide appetite would want to think that yes, maybe 2 mornings mean 2 mornings, so they have more time to finish the food and don't waste it. And here, this is how you eat it. Instruction very clear, with your loins girded, sandal on your feet, staff in your hand. And I see the young men, they're walking with their pants below their waist, and they cannot run fast. If your loins not girded, your pants will drop off, and it's just more pleasant to see rather than to see people with their pants hanging down, exposing more than need to be shown. So let's be righteous men, be the men that keep their pants on their waist, and just be ready. Because when the loins girded, what it's really saying is that you're to get ready to go and ready to move fast. That's what it's about. So it's for a purpose, and it is Creator's Passover offering. And Passover it's gives me the impression of something that is skipping over the marked house. So whenever I think of Passover, I think of the destroying angel skipping over the houses that had the blood marked on it. So that the firstborn in those houses would not be struck, and the blood will be a sign on the doorpost. Right, and verse 14 says it's to be a memorial. This day shall become to you a remembrance, and you shall celebrate it as a festival to the Creator throughout your generations. Celebrate it as a festival and everlasting law. It also says 7, well, we can move on to verse 15 to 20, and I'll read it. It says, 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. Indeed, on the first day you cause the leaven to cease from your houses, for whoever eats leavened bread from the first day until the 7th day, that being shall be cut off from Israel. And on the first day it is a set apart gathering, and on the 7th day you have a set apart gathering. No work at all is done on them, only that which is eaten by every being, that alone is prepared for you. And you shall guard the festival of Matzo, for on the same day I brought you your divisions out of the land of Mitzrayim, and you shall guard this day throughout your generations, an everlasting law. In the first month, on the 14th day of the new moon, in the evening you shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the new moon in the evening. For 7 days no leaven is to be found in your houses. For if anyone eats what is leavened, that same being shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether sojourner or native of the land. Do not eat that which is leavened in all your dwellings. You are to eat unleavened bread. So as we read this, we see, is it 6 days or is it 7 days you're to eat unleavened bread? And we have to pay keen attention to these things. Of course, there's a sacred one, the assembly, and day 7, no major work should be done except that of preparing food. And if you fail to honor this, you will be cut off from Israel. And this will mean cut off, not just from Israel, but cut off from the Creator's favor. Not just socially, because we see this also reflected in Leviticus chapter 22, verse 3, that persons who disobeyed will be cut off from the Creator. Except that in this context, it says cut off from Israel, which I presume it is synonymous. And on top of that, there are the guard Matzo. How do you guard Matzo? Right? It's something that we pay keen attention to. And if we're instructed to pay keen attention, we're not to tolerate the idea of not eating the Matzo. Right? It is very important that we protect this kind of practice, right? Because it is good to eat food as well. And we do not see anything bad in this. Which verse is it that said 6 days? Oh, verse 19 says, for 7 days no leaven is to be found in your houses. But if we refer to Deuteronomy 16, verse 8, let me quickly go to Deuteronomy 16, verse 8. And it says, 6 days you eat unleavened bread, and on the 7th day there is a closing festival to the Creator, your Elohim. You do no work. Right? So it is telling you that one thing is for sure, you're to eat it 6 days. But here in the Exodus part, we're seeing that we're to eat it 7 days. Right? One thing is sure is that on the first day you must eat it. Should we pay emphasis on eating the matzo, or should we place emphasis on avoiding the consumption of leaven? I look at it again. You shall guard the matzo for on the same. No, not the part. Only that which is eaten, every being that is prepared to you. No, I'm not seeing that part. Oh, it says, for if anyone eats what is leavened, that same being shall be cut off. So you'll not be cut off. I'm not saying that you'll be cut off if you do not eat matzo. I'm saying you'll be cut off if you eat what is leavened. So that is the emphasis. And ensure that whatever you do, you make sure you eat it on the first day. Right? So that's something we guard. And I'm also seeing 21 days. You eat it until the 21st day of the new moon in the evening. And I'm saying this is like a redundant instruction, because we're already told that it must be eaten for 7 days. 7 and 14 is 21, naturally. So why is it that he said you shall eat until the 21st day? The only thing I can think of is that some person may just have the idea to just eat it in the days and don't eat it in the nights. But when it says until, it means that you can continue eating it day or night. Straight until. And this is not just about children of Israel, but if there's a sojourner or a native in the land, and so they have an obligation to consume matzo if they accept the Creator of the Elohim of the Israelites. All right, we'll read 21 through to 39. And Moshe called for all the elders of Israel and said to them, go out and take lambs for yourselves according to your clans, and slay the Pesach. You shall take a bunch of hyssop and dip it in the blood that is in the basin, and strike the lintel and the 2 doorposts with the blood that is in the basin. And you, none of you, shall go out of the door of his house until morning. And the Creator shall pass on to smite the Mitzrayim, and shall see the blood on the lintel and on the 2 doorposts, and the Creator shall pass over the door, and not allow the destroyer to come into your houses to smite you. And you shall guard this word as a law for you and your sons forever. And it shall be when you come to the land which the Creator gives you, as He promised, that you shall guard this service. And it shall be when your children say to you, what does this service mean to you? And you shall say, it is the Pesach slaughtering of the Creator, who passed over the houses of the children of Israel in Mitzrayim, when He smote the Mitzrites and delivered our souls. And the people bowed their heads and did obeisance. And the children of Israel went away and did so as the Creator had commanded Moshe and Aaron. So they did. And it came to be at midnight that the Creator struck all the firstborn in the land of Mitzrayim, from the firstborn of Pharaoh, who sat on his throne, to the firstborn of the captives who was in dungeon, and all the firstborn of livestock. And Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants and all the Mitzrites. And there was a great cry in Mitzrayim, for there was not a house where there was not a dead one. Then he called for Moshe and Aaron by night and said, arise, go out from the midst of my people, both you and the children of Israel, and go serve the Creator as you have said. Take both your flocks and your herds as you have said, and go. Then you shall bless me too. And the Mitzrites were strong on the people to hasten and send them away out of the land, for they said, we are all dying. And the people took their dough before it was leavened, having their kneading bowls bound up in their garments on their shoulders. And the children of Israel had done according to the word of Moshe. And they had asked from the Mitzrites objects of silver and objects of gold and garments. And the Creator gave the people favor in the eyes of the Mitzrites, so that they gave them what they asked, and they plundered the Mitzrites. And the children of Israel set out from Ramesses to Sukkot, about 600,000 men on foot, besides the little ones. And a mixed multitude went up with them too, also flocks and herds, very much livestock. And they baked unleavened cakes of the dough which they had brought out of Mitzrayim, for it was not leavened, since they were driven out of Mitzrayim, and had not been able to delay, nor had they prepared food for themselves. So here goes a very lengthy section of the reading. And they were to take the lambs according to their clans, and were to slay the Pesach. Right, so I'm taking, these are the heads of the tribes, these are heads of the clans, had these senior responsibilities that they issued to the elders, and they moved according to their family. I'm not sure if we're familiar with hyssop. They were told to take a bundle of hyssop, and a big bundle is normally at least 3 roots combined together, right? And it's a small brush-like plant suitable for sprinkling, right? In verse 23, that when the Creator passed over, when the destroying angel passed over, it does not smite them, right? So no harm came to the children of Israel. And I remember the last time we saw the word no harm was Jacob, when he was saying that, the Creator protected him from Laban. And when he protected him from Laban, he was, there was no harm that was meted out to him. So even in the midst of danger, the Creator's children are protected. And just to reemphasize, the Passover is something to be practiced forever. It's not the mockery that we see is done with communion today, right? It's a very solemn instruction, and something that must be followed to the T. And when you enter the land, you shall keep the service, linking back to, we see in Exodus 6 verse 8, he says that you shall keep this service. Let me look at Exodus chapter 6 verse 8, see exactly what that reference was about. And I shall bring you into the land which I swore to give to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give it to you as an inheritance. I am the Creator. So it has much to do with the land. All right, we're looking at back to Exodus chapter 12. And we can look at verse 29. 29 actually says that midnight, Creator struck all the firstborn, and it mentions them in order of superiority and royalty. We see Pharaoh, firstborn of Pharaoh, and the firstborn of the captives was in the dungeon. That's the prisoners, and also the firstborn of the livestock. So Pharaoh, prisoners, livestock. I think in the preceding chapter we see also the sons of the maidens, right? And when this happened, Pharaoh was the first one to respond. He himself was a firstborn, and he must be really finding himself lucky or scared to know that all firstborns were struck, but yet he was not struck. I don't know if we had noticed that. He was a firstborn, right? And all of this is to fulfill what we see that was mentioned in Exodus chapter 9, verse 16. And this supporting reference says, "And for this reason I have raised you up, in order to show you my power and in order to declare my name in all the earth." So all this is happening to Pharaoh is also to declare the power of the Creator, right? And from the greatest to the least, everybody's firstborn was affected. And I think there was a verse that said, in every household was affected. And I'm saying there are so many households today that don't really have a firstborn in it, right? And there are some firstborns. Can you just imagine in a household where there are like 3 firstborns dead, and the mother being the parent of all of them? If that's the case, it must have been the gardener or the pool man or some other person got the mother pregnant, because it's really when firstborn is mentioned, it's not mentioned firstborn of the mother. It's actually firstborn of the father. So if a mother has 3 sons for 3 different men, worst case scenario, not a worst case, that's a regular thing today, right? All 3 boys in that house would have died because they were all firstborns. So if there was a what we call a quote unquote jacket situation, then in that time of Pharaoh, everything would have been revealed. A very horrifying situation it was. And for there was not a house where there was not a dead one. So every house seemed to have had a firstborn. That's the only way I can explain that. So in haste, Pharaoh shouted to Moshe and Aaron, "Get up and get out, worship the Creator." And do you remember when he was holding ardent on only men should go and women said women don't need to sacrifice, and he said children don't need to sacrifice, and then say, well, you can go with the children and the men, but do not go with the animals. And Moshe was responding, no, I'm not only going with my animals, I'm actually going with your animals. So all of his objections were nullified in this urgent instruction for them to go. In verses 33 onward, we see where they desperately say, we are all dying. The question comes to mind, how is it that they're all dying? When is it that they were all firstborns? Why would other persons die outside of the firstborns? Because for they said, the Mitzrayim said to the people, hurry up and get out, because we are all dying. So that's the response when death is at someone's door. You know how proud and pompous they are. You see now they're very beseechful and frightened at the prospects of losing precious life. So we also see where they got a chance, the Creator gave them the instruction again to borrow from the Mitzrayim objects of silver, gold, and garments. And what you'd realize, the order of these things that are listed, you wonder which one is most valuable. Gold is more precious than silver. And so the gold is mentioned after the silver. But also we see that the garments is mentioned after the silver and gold. So it seems as if these garments were some real name brand garments, good, strong, full in cotton and wool. And so it was named last as the objects were mentioned in order of value. These were, some versions say that it's borrowed, some versions say that they asked them for it. But if it's for a 3-day journey, 3 days journey, then only under that context I can see them asking to borrow with an intent to return to it. But as we have said before, based on the fact that they were enslaved and were not rewarded duly for their productivity, then it is fairness to take all their wealth, because they would have owed them for the work that they did to build those mighty storehouses back in Mitzrayim. Verse 38 spoke of 37 spoke of 600,000 men, but it should be noted that there were children, and the children under 20, persons under 20 were not counted as in the men category. And people over the age of 60 or 50, I think it was, would have seen that being like indigents or helpless or not so much fitting for the army, so they were not counted. So you can just imagine the numbers, maybe in the millions, maybe 1-2 million, approximate. And on top of that, verse 38 says there was a mixed multitude that went up with them. I'm wondering if it was a good idea to bring these people with them, because they had a practice of worshiping false deities. And we're going to realize later that the conflicts that were caused, these people among the mixed multitudes would have been some of the troublemakers. If I had time, I would have shared the Matzo song. I wrote a Matzo song and I'll share it because these things actually remind us of the exact instruction that was given. So we see in this section, ordinary persons died, not just the firstborn, but they were also persons that oppressed the children of Israel. Right? The mixed multitude, it shows that, the Creator shows mercy to the nations because they never had to be saved, and they, having accepted Him, it showed that they were saved even though they had mixed loyalties. But at that point, they accepted the Creator of the Elohim of the Israelites. Even though later we see the blessings and the trouble. All right, let's read the last section. That's verses 40 through to 49. And the sojourn of the children of Israel who lived in Mitzrayim was 430 years. On that same day, it came to be that all the divisions of the Creator went out from the land of Mitzrayim. And it came to be at the end of the 430 years. It is a night of watches unto the Creator for bringing them out of the land of Mitzrayim. This is that night of watches unto the Creator for all the children of Israel throughout their generations. And the Creator said to Moshe and Aaron, this is the law of the Pesach. No son of a stranger is to eat of it. But any servant a man has bought for silver, when you have circumcised him, then let him eat of it. A sojourner and a hired servant does not eat of it. It is eaten in one house. You are not to take any of the flesh outside the house, nor are you to break any bone of it. All the congregation of Israel are to perform it. And when a stranger sojourns with you and shall perform the Pesach to the Creator, let all his males be circumcised, and let him come near and perform it. And he shall be as a native of the land, but let go no uncircumcised eat of it. There's one Torah for the native born and for the stranger who sojourns among you. And all the children of Israel did as the Creator commanded Moshe and Aaron, so they did. And it came to be on that same day that the Creator brought the children of Israel out of the land of Mitzrayim according to their divisions. So it showed who could eat of it. And I think in the first part of the reading, we saw where 430 years were mentioned and not the 400 years that we saw in another chapter. And the difference of the 430 and the difference of the 400 was due to the fact that when Abraham got the message from the Creator, the covenant promise, he was about 70 years old, right? 29 years later, he would have been approached again, and then under a year later, Isaac would have been born. So we see a 30-year gap between when Abraham was told what would happen and when Isaac would have been born. So if we're counting from Abraham, it would be 430 years. If we're counting from Isaac, it would have been 400 years. But please note that Israel was not enslaved for 400 nor 430 years. It was less. They were enslaved for less than even 210 years. And how I would have arrived at that 210 is that Isaac, he was 100 and, well, Jacob was 130 when he descended down to Egypt, right? And his father would have been when at his father's age at 130, we get the 210, right? Because his father had him when Isaac had them when the twins when he was 70. So 70 plus 130, that's 200. Right, something that we could check, and in the preference of time, I could just give you the text for you to read: Exodus chapter 6, Genesis 15, Genesis 25, Genesis 35, and 47. Right, so those markers will help us to understand the timeline for slavery. It was a night of watches. That means there's something to be anticipated and observed keenly, and no stranger may eat it. If a person had a servant in his household that's not circumcised, that would have prevented him from participating in the Passover. I think it's verse 44 actually says it says, any servant a man has bought for silver, when you have circumcised him, then let him eat of it. So in other words, you can't eat the Passover and your servant in your household that you've bought as not circumcised. So it's a very serious thing. So I'm actually forbidden from participating if I have a servant in my household that I do not encourage to get circumcised. Once he's circumcised, he can participate. So the covenant membership door actually opens at that point. What about temporary residents and hired workers? Yeah, we have to consider those as well. They cannot eat of it. And why it would have been mentioning these people outside of circumcision is that you may have persons who are hired servants. They are circumcised, but yet still they are not allowed to have the Passover because they're maybe, for example, they are often of the nations. There are people of other nations that don't serve the Creator that are circumcised. It does not mean that they automatically can enter the community and participate in Passover. So it's more than just that. So we have to be careful of the strangers. No uncircumcised male. And so if we have any uncircumcised male within our midst, we are to encourage them as best as possible. So we're not going to be forcing down anybody's zip to see what's happening in there. But we must speak it clear. And those persons who understand should know whether they should participate in the Passover ceremony if they're circumcised, yes or no. Because it's one law for all. All right, so I think that's the end of the chapter 12, very extensive. But we saw where Israel got a calendar, and one that would be seen and one that was different from that of the other nations. So that in itself eliminated the two other phases of the moon, which is the dark one, and we saw also the sliver, right? And we saw a mixed multitude leaving after 430 years. And the Passover remains a night of watching, something to be observed, as there's one law for everybody. Thanks for, I trust that we continue to study these and make good on the instructions of the Creator. Let's have a discussion on the matter. I think that we're at the end of the chapter. My four sisters, are you still there? Okay. All right. Well, any questions on the chapter? Well, first of all, there's a little static in the background, so that is not coming through clear. Very sorry, you're not coming through clearly. All right, well, thanks for joining, and we continue on the next chapter 13 tomorrow. Shalom, family.
Shalom. 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 Shalom.
It's a very expensive. It's the longest chapter ever. 50 verses. Well, no, it's only Sister Sophia. She has class 7 to 9 in the evenings. That's fine. What's the point? What do you say that to say? What do you mean by saying that they're doing housework?
No, I said then they have something to say, then we tuning them, they have something to say, but then join with other things.
All right, I'm glad that is out. There's one thing I didn't do. I didn't mute my notifications. All of them just come up on the screen.